what the heck is going on?
Recently, we've talked about our lack of trust in some of the pollsters predicting massive Liberal leads. However, a new polling firm caught our eye and caused us to start asking questions. As we began to find out the answers, we realized that we were heading down a bit of a rabbit hole that just didn't seem to end, and we were left in shock with what we found. We bring you our deep dive into what we believe could be efforts by a foreign government to influence the next federal election right under the noses of the Canadian public.
Let's take a look. Ladies and gentlemen, the subject of today's video is a polling firm called Liaison Strategies. Now, this polling firm started introducing polling results that were captured by Wikipedia and would subsequently be fed into 338 Canada. So what's the big deal, you might ask? Well, the first thing about this is that you'll see that they've been releasing daily polls, and every daily poll has the Liberals in the lead. That's not the only odd thing, because they're the only ones that are doing daily polls. The odd thing is that this polling firm has not actually run a federal poll in the last 4 years. So if you take a look at the Wikipedia link in the description and you scroll down, you will not find a single federal poll run by Liaison Strategies since this data started to be captured on this website back in 2021. So it begged the question, who is Liaison Strategies? So we took a look. So this is the website for Liaison Strategies, and it doesn't really look like a website per se. Now, one of the interesting things that you'll notice is in the top right of this quote-unquote web page, you'll see some language preferences. You'll see English and French, which is
standard in Canada.
Pretty much the standard, yeah. But you'll also see the two Chinese written languages there. So that's a little odd. This is one of their pages with one of the Chinese language selections selected. So, you know, we're asking, okay, why would a national polling firm that their focus right now is going to be on federal Canada, why would they have English, French, and the two Chinese languages on their website? That seems a bit bizarre. But considering all of the coverage that we've done on foreign interference lately, our eyebrows started to go up. So we dove a little deeper. Back to the Ontario Business Registry, everybody, where we found the registration for Liaison Strategies. Now, of course, the pertinent information was not available until we had to pay for it, so we did that. And this is what we ended up finding. We found that the registered head office was at this address in Toronto, care of Alexander Nanoff. Okay. Turns out that Alexander Nanoff is the chief officer or manager, aka he's the company owner. And as you see, there's the address for this corporate office. In addition, there are two other business names that are associated with Liaison Strategies. One, Election Print, and the other, Focus on Research. So that's very, very interesting. Why is that interesting? Because if you go to Election Print, this is the website. And you'll notice there's a contact phone number up there. So the weird thing is when you call that number...
The number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number and try your call again.
And we checked the number, and we did call again.
Now, there's another number that you can call when you go on the contact page, but it's the same thing. So that's really bizarre. The other thing that's really bizarre is to have a election literature company paired with a pollster. No other pollster that we are aware of has that relationship. And there's a really good reason for that. Because if you're a pollster, you can potentially influence public opinion with your polls. And if you then are printing material for a party that you're favoring,
or even multiple parties,
then that is going to give you an unfair advantage. So there's some serious ethical concerns and reliability questions based on your polls, considering the fact that you also are saying to everybody, I'll print your literature at the same time. So that's very strange. So we started asking more questions about election print. This led us back to the Ontario Business Registry, everybody. Now, if you'll notice, the principal place of business is the exact same place of business that Liaison Strategy works out of. And it's the exact same place of business that Focus on Research subsequently works out of. And to nobody's surprise, the person who owns this business is none other than Alexander Nanoff. So you have 3 different businesses with the exact same address. This sounds like Dalian and
Karadix all over again.
all over again from Arrive Can. So we decided, just as we did back then, to say, all right, let's see this office building, this business complex where these companies are located in. Surely this must be, kind of an Amazon-sized warehouse for a polling firm and an election printing operation to take place, right? Wrong. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the address for Liaison Strategies and Election Print. And it's the Unit B number, so it's not on the main floor, it's on the second floor. And this is the entrance to the quote-unquote corporation. And you'll notice that the same address with different unit numbers shares the address with a couple of other independent businesses. So what the heck is going on here? That was our question. So we kept digging. Shovels are getting kind of dull at this point. The question we asked is, who is Alexander Nanoff? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Alexander Nanoff. And seems like he was born and raised in Canada. And he does have some French background. Now, it's significant because this is where we really started to say, what the heck is going on? As far as we can tell, Alexander Nanoff used to work for the federal government. And not just the federal government. He didn't work for an agency. He worked, well, let's show you. He worked in a constituency office. His title was constituency assistant. But our question was, well, all right, so you worked in a constituency office, meaning you worked for a member of parliament. Who did you work for? Well, he worked for a MP named Gung Tan. Okay? Who cares? He worked for a guy named Gung Tan.
Work for some random MP. That's great.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just some random MP. This is the previous Liberal member of Parliament for none other, and this is where Tanya heard me from across the house when I found this, for none other than the riding of Don Valley North. For those of you not familiar with the riding of Don Valley North, this is the riding in which current MP Han Dong ran for and is alleged to be, wittingly or not, assisted by the Chinese government to win the Liberal candidacy for evidence that is brought forward by CSIS allegedly being busing in international students, because remember, back then in the Liberal Party, you actually didn't have to be a citizen of Canada to actually vote for their candidates. So they bust in a bunch of international students, wrote his name on their palm so they knew who to vote for. And allegedly, that's how he won the candidacy. So you're saying, okay, sure, that guy was involved in foreign interference, but so what? Well, for those of you who don't know who Gung Tan is, this is a rookie Liberal MP, and he had to quit because there was allegations of him being involved in foreign interference, as reported by Sam Cooper and others back in 2019. The other reason that he quit was because there was allegations of him fathering the child of one of his staffers, and then once that child was born, he shoved them out the door and didn't care at all.
Allegedly.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll love his reason, his official reason for resigning. He wanted to spend more time with his family. Now,
Which family?
well, which family? But this is the thing. This is what we hear from every single member of parliament. Oh, I'm going back to spend more time with my family. So you have this guy, Alexander Nanov, who worked for a guy who has alleged ties to the People's Republic of China. Okay? So he got caught, he resigned. And it was the same writing that the guy who followed him ended up having allegations with ties to the People's Republic of China. Okay, that's kind of bizarre. So Alexander Nanov leaves the federal government. Then he tries to run for a trustee position in Toronto Centre. Isn't successful. Then he decides to set up these companies, which is kind of peculiar, because why would you set up these companies if you're not going to be polling for the federal government in the federal election?
Right, because if you look back to the screen that we have the information of the companies, some of these weren't registered, like they were registered back in 2020 or 2021. Why would you be setting up these companies 4 years in advance?
To do nothing with them.
Right.
Now, there's some other questions about Alexander Nanov that need answering as well. The main question is, why is Alexander Nanov part of an organization called the Canada-China Forum? Now, this is an organization that seems designed to strengthen relations between Canada and China. So you may say, okay, well, that's a coincidence. Well, considering Mr. Nanov worked directly for a member of parliament that was alleged to be involved in foreign interference from China, there's one more question that needs to be asked. Why are you part of an organization that has another politician, Yuan Pao Wu, that was reported by Sam Cooper and others to be blatantly involved in supporting China and seems to be wittingly collaborating with that country to influence politics in China?
Well, now, the thing is, to be on this board or to be involved in this organization on its own is not an issue, but you have to call into question the legitimacy of the polls created by Liaison Research when the owner, CIO, whatever you want to call him, is also on this Canada-China Relations Board.
Well, and the thing is there's no mention of Alexander Nanov on the Liaison website. There's no mention of him when the actual face of the organization is putting out these polls. There's no mention of it on like anything like LinkedIn. There's just like an Alex N. That's it. So it wasn't really that easy to find that this guy is behind all this. So it's very, very bizarre.
So now you have this pollster that has not put out polls in the last 4 years and is putting them out essentially every day. The owner has a connection to this other organization, the Canada-China Forum. Can we trust these polls?
Well, and he's now connected to two different politicians that both have alleged ties to foreign interference to China. And this guy's website, this is where the strange question comes into place. Why does he have Chinese as a option in terms of viewing his website when it's supposed to be a federal polling firm? Why does his election print website have numbers that go nowhere? There's a lot of very strange things going on with this individual and his quote-unquote businesses. Never mind the fact that his organization is now flooding the polling data with even more data points skewing in the Liberals' direction. So considering all of this, this is even more reason for Canadians not to trust the polls out there, because now we seem to have some evidence of some very shady things going on, not just on the eco side from the man who said that he was going to do anything possible to make sure that Pierre Poilievre doesn't win the next election, but from this quote-unquote brand new, not brand new polling firm that all of a sudden has decided to run liberal-friendly polls right ahead of a federal election call. So, ladies and gentlemen, be very wary of what you're seeing on social media. Be very wary of what you're reading when it comes to polls. Wouldn't even bother at this point. But one thing's for sure, we have external forces that are trying to influence this federal election, and that just makes it that much more important that every single Canadian get out and vote to ensure that there's too many of us voting to make this too big to rig.